You're listening to the Law Lives Project. I'm your host, Angie Vishianan. I'm a lawyer that launched a startup focused on changing the legal profession through mentorship. Through this podcast, we will explore the early career steps of real lawyers to help students see that many of us didn't have it all figured out at first. It takes time to find your way in the profession, so we want to shed light on some of the challenges people face in the earliest part of building their careers. Each week, I sit down with members of the legal profession and chat with them about the paths they took to get where they are now, including the times they stumbled, the times they fell, and the times they needed a little help. To encourage candor and vulnerability on this show, the attorney guests will remain nameless, but their stories will be laid bare for your consideration. This episode is sponsored by the Princeton Review. For more than 35 years, students and their families have trusted the Princeton Review to help them get into their dream schools. Their mission is to provide personalized, innovative, best-in-class private tutoring, test prep, and admission products and services to help students knock down barriers and achieve their academic goals. They are solely on the side of the students. They are not affiliated with any of the test developers. When it comes to your future, they'll cover you every step of the way. With score guarantee courses, private one-on-one tutoring, webinars, and support articles, you'll never lack the tools you need. Check them out at www.review.com or call 800-2-REVIEW. That's 800-273-8439. And save 20% on your course enrollment with promo code TPRLLP. Today's guest had two major surprises while attending Columbia Law School. Specifically, she found out that she was pregnant with twins in her 2L year. Thankfully, she had a strong support system of family and friends that helped her finish law school on time and land a job in BigLaw in litigation. She managed to juggle the demands of work and single parenting for 8 years in BigLaw before transitioning to a role in the investigations department of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Eventually, she left the SEC to become an accredited financial counselor to help lawyers and others learn how to pay down their debt and make wise financial decisions that will enable them to live a lifestyle that they want. I was blown away by her grit and honesty, and I'm sure you will be too. So let's dive right in. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on the Law Lives Project. We're going to start off with some questions about your law school journey, and then we'll talk about your first legal position and how your career has progressed since then. Sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Tell me, what were the reasons that you decided to go to law school?
So I originally wanted to go into musical theater when I was in high school, but I was pretty smart, kind of top of the class, like a lot of lawyers are. And I decided that law school would be the best use of both my brain and my need to constantly be performing. I was in a government class in high school. We did a section on civil rights and specifically the Bill of Rights. And I was smitten. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to fight for civil rights as a lawyer. And I'm going to be up in court and I'm going to get to wear fancy suits and I'm going to get to basically play lawyer all day. And so that's how my career trajectory completely changed from going into the arts to going, basically gunning for law school when I started college.
Wow, so you knew pretty early on. So when you got into college, did you designate yourself pre-law, or what steps did you take to kind of keep going down the path?
Yeah, so we didn't have a pre-law major or designation, but I was told that, to get into law school, you basically just need to have really good grades and you need to do really well on the LSAT. And so if you can have those two elements, pretty much nothing else matters. And so that's what I focused on. I ended up picking a major that I was really interested in, something where I knew that I would like the classes. And I also was told that department was not shy about giving out A's. Yeah, there was another department that I was considering, and my guidance counselor at the college, my advisor, actually sat down with me and I said, yeah, I'm interested in going to law school. So I'm trying to pick between sociology and poli-sci. And she said, well, let me just tell you, the sociology department is very tough on their students. They don't give out a lot of A's. You may end up kind of in the middle of the pack unless you're really, really amazing. Poli-sci is not like that. So if that's something that's important to you, you might want to take it.
At least they were honest about it.
They were, and I did very well in the poli-sci department. So
Did you go to like a large state school or was it a smaller liberal arts college or what kind of undergraduate institution did you go to?
I was at a tiny school. I had actually, when I was in high school, I was deciding between a couple of different colleges, and I was living in California at the time. And I really wanted to go back to the East Coast because that's where I was originally from. But I remember thinking, oh, my dream school is in Boston. I'm so excited. And it was the end of March and it was snowing there. And I said, I can't do it. I'm not going to make it. So I ended up somewhere sunny at a small school that was willing to give me money, not a full ride, but more money than anybody else was giving me. And I thought, this will do.
And so what state did you end up in?
I was in California.
Did you go to law school straight out of undergrad?
I did. I went straight through, which is such a culture shock.
Did you have any internships with law firms or any exposure to law while you were in undergrad?
So I actually did work for a law firm in San Diego in my last year, and basically the summer between graduating and going to law school because I wanted to at least get some experience of what lawyers do. I was a file clerk. I was literally sitting in the file room for most of the day. It was a very small firm, and it just felt more like a business than practicing law. And so I thought to myself, "Ooh, I do not want to be at a small firm." That was an interesting experience, but that was the only legal experience that I had before I went to law school. And, I didn't do any other internships or anything else. I was just so set on getting to law school.
Based on the limited exposure that you had before law school, did you have any particular practice area in mind when you were going to law school that you wanted to practice?
Well, other than thinking that I was going to go into some sort of civil rights work, that
Okay.
Coming from my high school experience, I thought, oh, I come from a family of immigrants. I thought maybe I'll do immigration law or, I'll do civil rights law. The ACLU was always very fascinating to me. And like that kind of work seemed really exciting. And I thought, oh, you know what? I want to go change the Justice Department from the inside out. I am going to completely revamp criminal law. That was my calling card. That's where I thought that I was going to really make a difference.
And did that impact the type of law school that you applied to at all?
Oh, no, I went to the best law school I got into.
Okay, so how did you decide which law schools to apply to?
So I applied to, I want to say maybe like 5 or 6. It was kind of a range. I used the same criteria when I had been applying to undergrad. I had some reach schools, I had some middle ground schools, and then I had some safety schools. And I got in pretty much everywhere except for, I think, 1 or 2 of my reaches, I was on the wait list. My criteria was really what is the most prestigious school that I can go to, because I think that's going to open up the most doors for me. And I think that's how I'm going to get a job. I'm not going to lie. When I would talk to my professors at college and I would tell them the schools that I was getting into, you could see their eyes get bigger and bigger the higher on my list I went. And so when I saw people's reaction to me getting into Columbia, I was like, oh, well, that's obviously where I'm going.
These notions of what law schools that you should apply to or the most prestigious law schools, where did that come from?
Absolutely rankings. Yes, right. US News and World Report. I kind of applied to a couple in the top 10 and a couple in the top 20, and then some safeties that I could easily get into.
Did you have any lawyers in your family?
No, I didn't have any college graduates in my family.
Oh, okay. So you're first gen college, first gen law school.
Yeah, my mom and I actually graduated from college in the same year.
Wow.
So she went back to school and we ended up finishing at the same time. And it's really cool, because we both have graduation pictures from the same year. But I did not grow up in a home that talked about different types of professional education or even college in general. College was important because I knew it was important. My mom thought it was so important she went back. But I didn't really have a lot of examples of what that process looks like, how you pick a school, what's important about different schools. So I just kind of with what seems like the best choice for somebody who's coming from, I don't have a family of lawyers that I'm coming from. I don't have a community that's going to be there to support me. So where can I build this community?
Right. So fast forward a little bit. So now you've gotten into Columbia. And what was your experience like your first year there? Did you feel like you had made the right choice? Did you feel out of place? How was your first year experience?
On balance, my first year experience was pretty awesome. Other than dealing with the shock of moving from California to New York. Now, granted, I'm from the East Coast, so it actually was kind of like moving home. But I had never lived in the city, and I had been in California for years, so I was really, really nice and really friendly, which did not bode well in New York. I had to change that very quickly so I wasn't followed by, super friendly people. But once I got over that, I think going to Columbia was a really different experience for me because it was the first time I wasn't the smartest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I was very used to being at the top of my class, being in classes that weren't really challenging. And I think that's an experience of a lot of lawyers who come from kind of middle of the road or, lower tier undergrad schools. Yeah, you might be the smartest person in the room in a lot of situations. When I got to Columbia, that was not the case at all. I was surrounded by people way smarter than me, and I could tell it was the quiet ones who were the most dangerous. The ones who got the full ride didn't talk about it. They just did really well, very naturally. And I was in awe of a lot of it because it really was much more challenging than anything I had ever done before. But that was actually part of what I loved about it. For a long time, school had not necessarily been challenging. It was fun. And I have to tell you, going from senior year in San Diego to 1L in New York was hard.
And you kind of beelined it for law school. So a lot of people who have been high achievers all their lives and they really focus on trying to achieve one big goal, sometimes they get there and that goal is not what they thought it would be. So do you think that law school was really what you thought it would be, or was there a lot of differences in your preconceived notions and the reality?
So I think law school was great for me. I think that it was a good environment. I am a natural student. I enjoyed it. I had really good professors. And I think law school was just different for me because of personal circumstances. It wasn't that law school failed me, it was more that I came into circumstances that were very, very different than I had ever imagined for myself.
So let's dig into that a little bit. What was the personal circumstance that made law school really challenging?
So I became a single mom to twins my 2L year.
Wow, that's challenging. Do you remember what were the thoughts that were going through your mind when you found out you were pregnant?
So there was terror and there was a lot of confusion and there was a lot of, can I do this? How can I possibly do this? How can I possibly do this alone
Hmm.
and finish what I started? It was so important to me that I finish what I started.
And around what time did you find out that you were pregnant?
September, so beginning of the year. That's how I started the year, and I ended it giving birth.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. You said that you got pregnant at the beginning of your 2L year. What did you do in the summer between your 1L year and 2L year?
So I actually worked at right. I had a very strong public service interest going into law school, and so for my 1L summer, I really wanted to intern at the government because my goal was to change the justice system from the inside out. To do that, that meant I needed to be inside the justice system. So for my 1L summer, I interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. So it's down in Brooklyn, and it's kind of cool because they have a lot of the airports, and so they get a lot of the drug trafficking, right? And this is how New York gets split up, right? You're either dealing with securities fraud in Manhattan, or you've got like the drug trafficking and the gangs in the outer boroughs. I was in an outer borough, and I got to work on a RICO case. I got to do the witness testimony during the trial for one of the experts. It was pretty exciting. And, the lawyers that I worked with were phenomenal. They were great mentors. They really let me and the other intern who was working on this case play with the evidence and work on the outlines and really see the motion briefing and how things worked in an actual trial. It was so exciting. There were multiple defendants. It was really fascinating. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is amazing. How can I get myself back to a place like this? And, I knew that the federal government in particular doesn't really like new lawyers. They don't want to have to train you, right? Have somebody else train you for a few years and we'll get you when you're good and ready. All the assistant U.S. attorneys that I talked to said, go to a firm. If you want to back here, go to a firm, go to a good firm, and they will train you. They will teach you what you need to know, and then you can come back here.
All right, so after that first summer, when you go back in 2L year and you find out that you're pregnant, talk to me about how that impacted you in your 2L year.
So I'm pretty stubborn. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was definitely finish on time. That was a really big thing for me. I didn't want to delay or derail my law school career. So I didn't tell anyone for the first semester, which is kind of hard to do because I was pregnant with twins and I got big fast. And so I did an externship for a federal judge in the Southern District of New York during the fall of my 2L year. And I did it with another law student. And we basically just helped the judicial clerks write the opinions and do the research and draft things. And I got to write an opinion myself. I had one of my own cases that I was working on. It was great experience. It did teach me I didn't want to be a judge or work for a judge. But I remember I was tired. I was in my first trimester. I was a basket case. And I remember one time we were on our way to the courthouse, which was all the way down in the southern tip of Manhattan, and Columbia is up in Harlem. And so 100 blocks south that we have to go. And my partner and I were kind of, getting ready to get on the train. And I was walking a little sluggishly and I was like, oh my gosh, let me just stop and get a donut. I just need a little bit of sugar, a little energy. And he's like, that isn't really healthy for you. And I was just like, look, I'm pregnant. Okay. So shut up. And, and his mouth dropped to the floor. And I told him, yeah, I'm pregnant with twins. So I'm going to eat this donut and then I might have another one after. He was very quiet the rest of the day.
I'm sure. What was it like when people started to find out?
The timing ended up working out really well in terms of the term is to pop, right? My belly popped, meaning you can no longer think that I'm just getting fat. I'm definitely pregnant. For a long time, people were just like, wow, Jessica's really letting herself go.
Oh.
She's not going out as much anymore. Why doesn't she drink? What's happening? So it happened over winter break. And before I left for winter break, I met with my dean, and my dean actually had been my torts professor. He was amazing. He was really, really supportive. He just asked me, what do you want to do? Do you have plans? Do you have support? What do you need? And I told him it was really important for me to try to finish on time. And I was going to work really hard to do it. And having him be so welcoming, he was not judgmental at all. He didn't ask me any questions I didn't want to answer. Really just asked me, what can we do to make this easier for you? He talked about, do you need help with classes? Do you need somebody to help take notes for you? Columbia is a very old school, and some of the classrooms have pews set up like a church. I knew very soon I might not fit in the pews anymore. And
logistically, I just may not be able to attend class anymore.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to need some accommodations that I have never considered before in my life. And he was very ready to just work with my professors and work with me to figure out how, I could still get through everything on time. He was kind of shocked that I didn't want to take any time off. I didn't want to take a break or anything. But the timing was, I was crossing my fingers. It was going to work out. I was basically going to give birth right around the time of finals.
Oh, gosh.
I was hoping to make it through. That was my plan.
So what sort of accommodations were you able to request if people do find themselves in the same situation when they're in law school? What are some things that you would tell them to think about?
Definitely make sure that your professors know and that you have somebody who is supporting you, whether it's somebody you talk to in student services first. I had a pretty good relationship with the dean because he had been my professor and we had connected. So he was a great person for me to go to. But if you don't, know the person in charge, find an advocate for you lower on the totem pole to have those conversations. Because if I hadn't known him and if he hadn't known me, I think I would have been really, really scared to ask anything, to even, talk about what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say, find somebody who can help you advocate for yourself. And then, definitely find other people in your classes who might be able to be a proxy for you, right? There are going to be days where maybe you still fit in the desk, but you feel horrible or you're exhausted or you're sick. There were a lot of classes that I just missed just because I couldn't get out of bed. And so knowing that there was always kind of a designated person who would be taking notes for me, and knowing that the professors knew that, right? So maybe asking for an outline of what they cover in class, things like that, things that will make studying easier down the line. Because they didn't have online school when I was there. They had just started letting laptops in. So it was like the dark ages of law school. There was no recording of anything, right? People were still taking handwritten notes, figuring out what kinds of support you're going to need based on how you work and how you like to work in terms of learning things and being able to study. That's going to be really important. And then also basic things like, hey, do you need somebody to go grocery shopping for you? Do you need somebody to help you make sure that you're feeding yourself? Do you need anyone to help you get to your doctor's appointments? As a single mom, I did have, wonderful friends, and I had a wonderful community that I was a part of. I just didn't have a partner. So all of those, I have an amazing best friend. She is still my best friend. We are soulmates. If we hadn't met our husbands, we we would be soulmates. And she was my rock. And we lived together, and she helped me with everything. But she was a law student, but she was a year ahead of me. She wasn't in my classes. She couldn't like take my classes for me or take notes for me or anything because she had her full load. So I would definitely say start building a support network and don't be afraid to ask for help because people really do want to see you succeed. Yeah, some people are total jerks and like don't pay attention to them. But on balance, generally your law school wants to see you successful. They don't want you to be that person who didn't graduate or that person who did really badly or didn't get a job at the end of the day.
Did you feel like the other students treated you well or treated you poorly when they found out?
So I think I was pretty popular from my 1L year. I am fairly extroverted. And like I said, I was young, right? I had come right from college. So I was like the social chair for all of the groups that I was in. I would plan the parties. People knew me around campus. And because of that, I think people had an image of me already as like kind of a nice person. And yes, were there whispers behind my back? Of course there were. Was it emotionally traumatizing? Did I cry in the shower? Yes, of course I.
Oh, yeah.
But I also had really, really good friends, and they kind of like made a bubble around me, right? And
That's good.
did let strangers or people who might not have my best interest at heart, spend a lot of time with me or get into my space a lot. I often was like on campus with like a pack of people,
Yeah.
and it was great because that was my pack.
One of our guests from our first season, she also got pregnant in law school in her 1L year. And she said that, during that time, people were still forming their groups, their cliques. And so it was really challenging because you started to see really quickly that people started to freeze her out, thinking, well, you're not going to be able to contribute to our study group that much. She had a really tough time with that. So did you face any of that?
That does make a huge difference. I already had pretty strong friendships from my 1L year. I had met my best friend. She was a year ahead of me. I had a lot of friends who were kind of quote unquote upperclassmen. So not all of my friends were my year, meaning they weren't my competition.
So, did you get to participate in any extracurricular activities, even with everything that was going on in your life?
So I did, I was a moot court editor. So at Columbia, all the first years go through moot court and they have to write their brief and, do their oral arguments and stuff like that. And then the second years run that program. So that's what I chose to do because I really enjoyed the moot court program a lot. So I had the opportunity to work with another person, another 2L, and we drafted the problem. So we came up with the problem. We figured out what all the case law would be that would support both sides of the arguments. And then we worked with 1Ls to help them craft their briefs and draft their oral arguments and think through those legal issues. And I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I was super pregnant when it was happening.
Okay, so your plan was you were going to make it through your second semester and then have your twins around finals. So what ended up actually happening?
Oh my gosh. So I had 2 classes that semester. I maybe went to like 50% of my classes over the course of the entire semester, way more in the beginning, very, very few at the end. Eventually, I got put on bed rest and I couldn't go into school anyway. But I took 2 finals before giving birth. and one final after. And I'm pretty sure that you can guess which one I bombed. I lost my brain. I never slept again. I tried really hard to get them all in but then I was also struggling with, oh my goodness, I need to get these two babies out of me. I'm going to explode. I'm going to die. These were 6-hour exams, right? I was able to take all of my exams at home. When you're a 2L, a lot of the exams are take home anyway. They don't like drag you in like a 1L and have you sit in a room for 3 hours and all that kind of stuff. So it's like open book, 6 or 8 hours, maybe 24 hours, which doesn't help because then I just spend 24 hours like trying to write an essay. That was helpful because I could at least be at home, but I was still completely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I would sit for extended periods and was just trying to get through. And then I just couldn't get the last one out before I needed to be induced.
In your 2L year, that's typically when you do on-campus interviewing as well. Were you even able to participate in OCI?
So I did participate in OCI because they did it at the end of my 1L year. We did it at the end of the 1L summer. So right as I was finding out everything that was going on, I did know when I did OCI. And obviously, no, I didn't mention during OCI that, oh yeah, I'm pregnant with twins. You do OCI and then you have to go back to the firms, right, for callbacks, and that can take weeks. So at that point, that's when I started putting feelers out to see, hey, how family friendly is this firm? What's associate life like? And I actually did meet with some associates at the firms that I was really, really interested in. And I told them, hey, so I'm pregnant, and is this going to be a huge issue? Like, what is my life going to be like at this firm? And I really, really appreciate the women that I met with because they were very candid about what might not work very well and, what things like where the firm would be very, very supportive. So much of my decision hinged on what was my experience going to be like, right, 9 months from then when I went to be a summer associate and then potentially getting a job.
Did you come out of OCI with a job offer?
Yes, I did. And it was one of the most family-friendly firms that I came across.
So after having your children, did you start working on time?
Yeah, so that was a super fun conversation to have with HR. I think I called them probably about 3 months before I was due because I didn't have an obligation to say anything before then. I had to have a conversation with the person who was running the summer program to say, so I'm pregnant with twins. I'm due in May. And I know that the program starts the week after my finals. I think I might be recovering, if not still in labor. Is there something else that we could do? Can I start a little late? What does this need to look like? And, bless her heart, she didn't flinch or, I didn't hear anything drop. But she did tell me that it would be in my best interest if I made a point to be there for at least 8 weeks of the program. That was because I just needed to do enough work. I needed to do enough assignments that people would know that I can do good work. And so it was a 12-week program, and I ended up showing up. I was the last summer associate to show up, of course. I gave birth, and then I started 6 weeks later. And this was in a different city from New York. And so I had a lot of family support to come and basically allow me to split my time between two cities with newborns.
Oh my goodness. What type of work did you do at that firm during your second summer?
So law school taught me I definitely wanted to do litigation. I was obsessed with my Civ Pro class, and I really loved my professor. He was actually one of the lawyers on Brown v. Board of Ed. And so I was just like, oh my God, it's a sign. And that's what I wanted to do at the firm. And I went to a litigation heavy firm.
Criminal litigation or civil litigation?
No, this was all civil.
All right, litigation, huh? So what happened to civil rights?
Right? You know what happened? Twins happened.
You needed to make money.
Yeah, I really, really did.
So did you get an offer from that firm for post-graduation employment?
I did. Yes, I did.
Wonderful. So during the year, did you have family members who helped you raise your children while you were trying to finish up law school?
Oh, yes. My family is amazing. I don't know if it's the immigrant experience. We all go in. That's it. Somebody needs something. People are flying in from the island. Like there's all kinds of stuff that starts happening. So yeah, my mom and my grandmother stayed with me during the summer so that I could do my summer associateship. And then my mom actually went back to her home country. And my sister, who had been living in California, dropped everything in her life to come and spend my 3L year with me.
Wow, that is so great that you had such a wonderful support system.
Oh gosh, yes. My father was actually living in the next state over, so he was really close, and he would kind of do grocery shopping for me once a month. They would like go to Costco, he and my stepmom, and they would drive in to the city with like a carload of diapers and paper towels and food and all of this stuff. Yeah, so there is I have a very unique story, and I'm very proud of all of the things that I was able to accomplish, notwithstanding the circumstances. But I'm also very, very aware of how much support that I had from family, from friends. My friends at Columbia set up a babysitting schedule because even having my sister there, she was outnumbered if I wasn't there. I mean,
Right?
there's always more children around than people. So when I would go to class, a friend, like we had a schedule, one of my friends would be at my apartment with my sister helping with the babies.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it was really, really, it was amazing. I had never had a community like that. It's hard for me to describe how thankful I am.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go into law school, especially those who go straight from undergrad into law school, with this very set vision in mind of how they want things to play out. But, the best laid plans, right? I think things change and you can't always stick to the plan. So it was amazing that you were able to make your life work so that you could still accomplish this very important goal that you had. But I'm sure it involved a lot of doing things that you never thought you would do and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and handling things that you never thought you would have to handle. This episode is sponsored by Crescendo. Crescendo helps law students crush finals, the MPRE, and the bar. With hundreds of mnemonics and illustrations, thousands of official NCBE practice questions, affordable pricing, lifetime access, whiteboard videos, plus audio outlines and audio flashcards, Crescendo is revolutionizing legal education. Unlike some competitors who require expensive deposits, Crescendo offers the opposite. A 30-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. Most everyone sticks around. The 5-star reviews explain why you should try Crescendo. Matthew from Harvard said he wished he had Crescendo as a 1L. Visit crescendo.com to learn more. That's CRUSHENDO.com. Also, use promo code LAWLIVES15 with no caps or spaces. That's LAWLIVES15 to get 15% off on any of Crescendo's innovative bar prep material. And now, back to the episode. You started at BigLaw after graduation, and did you stay in the same practice area that you were in when you were interning, general civil litigation?
Yes. No, I stayed in the litigation group, and that was basically what I did for most of my time at that firm. And yeah, the boys were a little over a year when I started, and she wasn't family, but she was real close to it. She was my best friend's sister. She was my nanny for the first year that I was, a first year associate. And that made all the difference. Right? The difference between having to get your children ready to take them somewhere and getting to leave them at your own home was huge. So she lived with us for the year. She was phenomenal. She was also just wonderful with children. But she was kind of, in between her own schooling. She was in between her undergrad and her master's, and she just kind of wanted to bop around a new city for a year. And I was like, well, I've got a proposition for you. And it worked out really well. And I felt, again, like I could do what I needed to do because I had support. If I had, if it had just been me and I was trying to balance having my boys in daycare and, dropping them off in the morning and then working and worrying about what was going on with them during the day and picking them up, at some reasonable hour, because that's how daycares operate. And then going back to work, or working from home late into the night to finish things that I wasn't able to finish. That would have been really, really difficult. I don't want to underestimate how difficult it already was to be a young associate with young children. But again, the support was so important.
How long did you end up staying at that first firm?
I was there for 8 years.
And were you planning to make partner there?
So I wasn't planning on it. I went into that firm thinking I'm going to spend, 3, 4 years here max. And then I'm going to bounce. I'm going to go into the government. That's what I went into law to do. I want to be working for the public. And that was my plan. I was just going to kind of, get all that training, get all of my skills, and then transition back over to the government. And then the 2008 recession hit and nobody was going anywhere. And also, I don't know. I don't know what it is about BigLaw. You think you're going to make all of this money, and you do, but you also spend all of this money. And so at the end of the day, it's not like I was rolling in extra money. I felt like I was just getting by, which was kind of embarrassing. Now, granted, I was supporting an actual family. It wasn't just me, but it was still embarrassing. I was making more money than both of my parents combined when I was growing up. And I didn't understand where it all went. Now, granted, I never actually looked. I didn't actually look into it. I didn't research where the money may have been going, but I know it was going to, childcare and student loans, living in a metropolitan area that was very expensive. But I also wasn't really sure how I would do anything else given my situation. And so, the 2008 recession made it very clear that, ooh, I have a job. I'm not going anywhere. What if I didn't have a job right now? I don't even know what that would look like. I'm barely getting by with my job, and my job is like one of the most well-paid lawyer jobs you can have.
So, in that role, how much of your time were you spending working? I think a lot of people hear the horror stories about Big Law and the types of hours that people work. But, how were you able to juggle those hours with twins? What did your life look like?
It wasn't easy. My firm, I think, had an 1,800 minimum billable hour requirement. And I made it every year. I never made it very well past that until I got.
1,800 is actually not that bad for Big Law.
Yeah, no, it's not. You're right. It's a family-friendly firm, right?
Yeah, it's now 2,000 or 2,100 even if you want a bonus sometimes. So
And so, right, the gateways for the bonuses were not 1,800. That was just like to keep your job. And so, over the years at my firm, I tried different things. So as a junior associate, you really don't feel like you can ask for any of like the weird, flexible benefits that the firm
mhm.
says are available to people. So I didn't. I just I worked. I worked as much as I could. I made myself as available as I could to the partners. I worked for really great partners, and everybody knew what my situation was. And what's interesting is I think it was kind of a double-edged sword. People knew what my situation was. So they knew that, I might have to leave at a certain hour, but I'll be back online, right? An hour later, as soon as,
Mhm.
we finish dinner and, bath time and whatever. I felt like there were times where other people made decisions that I wouldn't be a great candidate to take this trip or
Ah.
to go prepare this witness because it's in another city and she'll have to be away for 3 days and maybe she's not the best candidate for that. And so I don't have any actual evidence. Of course there's no evidence, right? When is there? I just felt like my colleagues seemed to be doing more of that kind of stuff and I was more of the like I'm support back home. Like
Did you prefer that or did you actually hate that?
So there were parts of it that I preferred. I preferred not having to find, overnight sitters because I didn't have my amazing nanny beyond my first year. Then I actually did have to juggle and it was like kind of a nightmare and really stressful. But I didn't like somebody else making that decision for me. I'm very proud. I'm very stubborn. I worked really,
Yeah.
really hard to get where I was. And, although I wasn't planning on making partner, I wasn't opposed to somebody offering it to me. I thought that'd be really cool.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of things coming from an immigrant family, being kind of the first person in your family to have, this kind of an education, to have this kind of a career, being a woman, being a mom, being a single mom, all of these things put a pressure on me that I never put on myself when I was in law school to do a particular thing. But once I got into the firm, I felt a lot of pressure to be the one that makes it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get caught up in that game, right? And to see your journey, I think it's actually the story of a lot of people, but not a lot of people want to talk about it. You know, they go into law school having all the best intentions to do something that helps people. You know, they want to do something like civil rights or they want to do something that serves a noble cause. And then they get into law school and they get caught up in the prestige. You know, they get caught up in working for these mega law firms and the prestige and the money that comes along with that. And then you end up going there because you got an offer after your summer associateship. And then you work there and you think to yourself, oh, yeah, I'll make it back. I'll make it back. But you stay because of the golden handcuffs and because you got to pay off those student loans, right? And because you have all these financial obligations. And people don't understand how that slowly creeps. But I think it's actually the story of a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. All of that resonates so much with me because I do think it is the story of many people. There are parts of my story that are unique, of course, but I also think some of those unique parts of my story made it even easier for me to fall into that prestige trap because I wanted something that was objectively successful, right? There were other parts of my life where maybe if you look at me, you might not think that that's an objective success. Now, granted, most of those people are jerks. But that being said, when you see, I'm not going to lie, right? When you see a single mom, you don't always think, oh, wow, well, I'd like to be that. But if you see an attorney at a big law firm doing really well, maybe it doesn't matter what else that person has going on. Maybe it doesn't matter what the other problems are, or the other issues are, or the other concerning characteristics may be, because I am objectively successful. You tell me that I'm not getting it done. And I was really afraid of being anything other than that, like somebody who wasn't getting it done, because when you strip that away, am I that person who's not successful? Am I that person who didn't make the best choices? That's a really hard thing to face.
Yeah, especially if you've been somebody who's been a high achiever all your life. I think a lot of us are scared of that feeling of failure and feeling like we weren't enough. And I think that many of us struggle with those thoughts, especially out of law school, if we don't end up getting the job that we want, or if we get the job that we want, but it turns out not what we want it to be. And we just don't feel like we're doing enough. But, you know, having that prestigious name on paper, having that business card that says your name on it, you know, it kind of keeps you coming back for more. Okay, so you spent 8 years at Big Law, and then where did you go after that?
So I went to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I did get to the government, not nearly where I thought I would end up. Uh, and that was a function of the kind of work that I had been doing at the firm, the mentors that I had when I was doing litigation and then eventually securities enforcement work at the firm. And also just looking for something that would work really well for my lifestyle with my children. The SEC is one of the most work-life balance friendly federal agencies out there. They also,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, they also happen to pay really, really well. So, of the places that I could land, that was at the top of my list. And I had then met people from the agency in terms of the work that I was doing. They were on the other side of the table on investigations that I had worked on and things like that. So, even though I had very little interest in the financial industry or a financial regulator, I was like, well, this seems to work for my life. Let me just go do this.
How was that transition?
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was so great. Oh my gosh. I must have been in like some sort of like trance when I was in Big Law, probably from like lack of sleep. I don't know. And then I went over to the government and it was just like, it's like the blinders get taken off. This was literally at a time where they had kind of just dropped the hiring freeze. So I was in an applicant pool of, I was later told, nearly 1,000 people. I had serious imposter syndrome when I showed up on day one. I was really, really freaked out because it was not just litigation, but I was also doing it with people who had like come from FINRA, right? Had worked at broker dealers, had all of this financial industry experience. And I was just coming in as kind of like a litigator. So I was pretty intimidated by everybody there. But again, right? Usually that stuff is in your head. Again, I felt like I was back at Columbia. Like, I am no longer the smartest person in the room. I'm not going to say anything until I go read the securities manual.
When you made the transition, what was your life like at the Securities and Exchange Commission compared to your life at BigLaw?
God, it was like night and day. Oh, I'm sorry. I had my nights back. That's what it was. Yes, I had my nights back. It was just so crazy. It's so hard for me to describe. It's more about the pressure that you put on yourself to be constantly available. If you're in BigLaw, you are at the beck and call of like 3 layers of people who might need you, right? You have the clients, you have the senior partners, you have the junior partners. Everybody may need something from you at any point in time, and you have to be ready to jump. When I went over to the SEC, I was running the investigation. I sent out the subpoenas. And I had an amazing manager. He was so great. Not only did he like support me when I needed support, but he also let me go when I didn't. And he was just like, yeah, this is your investigation. I'll let you know if you're doing something wrong. But until then, just go do whatever you think makes sense. I was just like, oh, okay. I'll be in my office. I'm going to send you this draft subpoena before I send it out. He's like, sure, you can send it to me. The autonomy was such a difference and so refreshing that, yes, if I had a doctor's appointment with a child, I could schedule the testimony for a different day because I scheduled the testimony. Or if I wasn't interested in reviewing documents, over Thanksgiving break, I would make sure that the due date was a week before Thanksgiving, not the day before. All of these things now became something that I could control. And as a bit of a control freak, that was very comforting.
So, what were the types of discrete tasks that you worked on at the SEC?
I was in the Division of Enforcement, so I was conducting investigations into potential securities fraud. So I had been doing the defense side at my law firm, and it's a lot of the same skill sets, right? You want to figure out, okay, this is what I think might be happening. Maybe we get a tip from the outside or something like that. And we take witness testimony, we review documents, we determine whether there's enough evidence to substantiate a charge under a particular, aspect of the securities laws, what that charge would be. And, it's basically just putting together a case. The SEC is kind of the enforcement division. It has a trial unit. And so the investigators are kind of like the FBI to DOJ attorneys. So we do all the fact gathering, we put the case together, but we're all lawyers. So we know how to put a case. We understand the elements of securities fraud. And so we know how to do that. And then we are very involved in any potential trials that go on. I did do an administrative hearing for one of my matters that didn't settle out. A lot of it was very litigation heavy, but different in that I wasn't answering to a judge, which was really exciting.
And you weren't really beholden to a client, or many clients anymore. Really, kind of just have one client, the SEC, right?
Exactly. I have one client and it's the commission. And those are the only people that I need to satisfy. And they really just wanted to know that whatever I was planning on doing was well supported by the facts and the evidence and that we had a good argument under the law. And everything else was, I had to make it up as I went. Not make it up, because obviously there's millions of people who came before me and there are strategies and, structures in place to make sure I don't go off the rails. But within those confines, I did get to make a lot of decisions, and it was scary, but also really empowering in a way my law firm work often was not. I really felt like I was finally a decision maker, and that felt great because as freaked out and scared as I was that I would make the wrong decision, I also felt really good when I made good decisions and I saw over and over again, right, time and time again, like, hey, maybe I am a good decision maker.
I think a lot of people try to break down, at least when you're in law school, they try to break you down to say, are you more interested in transactional practice or litigation? And in the type of role that you were in with the SEC, it doesn't really fit into those two boxes neatly, does it?
I mean, it's pretty squarely in litigation. I think it's just a different type because, I mean, I dealt with opposing counsel, right? People that I investigated, companies that I investigated were represented, and there was that, but they weren't on equal footing because I was just running an investigation. And that's very different than having two parties coming before, an objective adjudicator where everyone's on a level playing field. When the government is looking for information, that's a different scenario than when the government is actually trying to prove something, and then defendants have all these rights and all this access to information and things like that. And so honestly, the investigative side is way more fun. It's all those things that I loved about litigation, the fact gathering, putting the puzzle together, figuring out what was going on without so much of the brief writing and the appellate law and, for lack of a better term, right, the civil procedure rules that I had loved so much. There's very different rules for investigations, and you don't have that like, well, it's been 3 days, so now you've given up all of your claims. Like, now we're just going to investigate that again. It was better for what I wanted to be doing. But that being said, it was still very adversarial, and that was really hard.
And what kind of hours were you working?
Ooh, the SEC is the best. So you have to be because it's the government. They're actually really strict about hours, and they don't want people working overtime because there's like labor laws and stuff that may come into play. So I basically worked a 40-hour week.
And how was your performance evaluated?
So, how many investigations you've done, how successful you were in terms of building the cases, whether you were a good team player, and the strength of your writing, whether because we do put together a lot of work product for the commission. Obviously, they need a lot of information to be able to make a decision, and that's our job to make sure that they are very well informed. And so that's kind of how they evaluate you in my section of enforcement that did the investigative work. And a lot of what I did was working with other teams. And so I got a really good experience being able to kind of work with other divisions on cross-divisional projects, or even working with other agencies. The Securities and Exchange Commission is only one of the financial regulators. So we did have, kind of joint efforts in different areas. And so that was always exciting for me. I am naturally a people person. I don't know why I went into litigation.
What were some of the best things about your job?
The best thing about my job was that I got to go home at the same time every day, and I had my weekends back.
What were some of the worst things about your job?
Oh, I mean, some of the hard parts about the job, there are things that were not in my control, right? It was a government agency. There are a lot of rules. There are a lot of processes that need to be followed. So, it's interesting going from a law firm where things can actually happen fairly quickly because maybe you have, one decision maker and that's it, right? The senior partner on the case gets to decide what happens, or the client decides what happens, and then you just make it happen. At the government, there's a couple more layers of people who have to approve what you're doing. And so that can kind of, jam up the works and slow things down. And I had absolutely no control over those people. I mean, it was really, look, I have sent this up. I don't know when it's going to be ready. I don't know when I'll hear back from other people. That I have no control over that. But, and I tell people this all the time, the SEC is an amazing agency to work for. The people there are whip smart and they're really nice. And it's a bunch of like accountants and lawyers, which is so funny. Like, who would think that like a building full of accountants and lawyers would be really nice, a really nice. But they all are, probably because we're all like not completely stressed, and a lot of us, big law, so
right.
cool. To be able to live our lives again. I took up hobbies. I had never had hobbies before. I watched shows. I missed like 9 years of pop culture.
Was the money a lot different though?
So the money was different. It was a 50% pay cut.
So how much would you have been making at BigLaw in the same seniority?
So I left my firm making close to $300,000. And when I went into the SEC, I came in a little under $150,000.
But did you feel like it was enough for your lifestyle?
So at that point, there had been so many changes in my life from a financial perspective. Again, it was a really hard transition in the beginning. It took me at least a year to really get used to, oh, no, I can't just spend money anymore. This is very different. It kind of felt like I was back as a first year because I was pretty much making what I made when I was a first year. And I hadn't been in that position in so long, but I wanted it so bad. I wanted to be out of that, that super, super well paid, yet super, super stressed out environment so badly. I was willing to make whatever sacrifices I needed to make. So there were all of these things that kind of coalesced together when I went to the SEC. Of course, I took a huge pay cut, yes. But at that point, my children were also older and they weren't in, daycare costing an extra mortgage. One of my best financial decisions, I took my last bonus from my firm and I bought a minivan. I paid for it in cash because I just took my bonus and I got a car. But that meant that I didn't have a car payment. And I was like, oh, this is okay, okay, okay. So I kind of like made all of these small moves that made the transition out of the law firm a little bit easier. And then when I got to the SEC and I really saw what I was dealing with, I was like, I'm going to have to make some other moves because this is not going to work for very long.
What was your last move?
Oh, my last move was out of the SEC altogether. I am now an accredited financial counselor. And I swear, if you would ask me, oh, hey, Jessica, 20 years ago, are you going to be a financial counselor one day? I'd be like, ew, money, yuck, no. And but this is what happens, right? You live your life and things pop up. But so while I was at the SEC, I really did realize, you know what? I don't think it was my job that was stressing me out. I think it's the practice of law. I think I might not like law. And
it only took you, 13 years to figure that out?
I am slow on the uptake, okay, Angie? I don't know what to tell you.
But I think it's important to say, hey, you took a second look at it after all these years, even though it was something that you worked so hard for such a long time, that you found something else that you were interested in, that you felt like, maybe this whole practice of law thing isn't for me.
Yes. And it was really hard because I thought leaving my law firm, oh, this is the problem. This is what is bothering me. And as long as I'm in a good environment, it'll be okay. And I got to the SEC and it's true. All the things that I said, it's a wonderful place to be. It's wonderful work if you love it. I didn't love the work. I wasn't really interested in doing investigations. There were fun parts of it, of course, but I didn't like fighting with people. I didn't like the adversarial nature. And when you're a litigator, there really aren't many options for non-adversarial litigation work. That's the nature of the beast. And so when I was thinking, oh man, I think I just don't want to be a lawyer anymore. Oh, this is going to be much harder than just going to another law job. That's not a 50% pay cut. That may be a 75% pay cut or an 80% pay cut. How am I going to do that? And that was my own personal finance journey that I then went on to figure out how I could leave the law and still support my family in a way that I was comfortable with. And of course, I was going to take years to do it. That's what I do. I'm the tortoise of all tortoises. I move slowly, but when I get there, I'm successful. And I came up with this extended 10-year plan where I was going to get out of the law, and then I met my husband. Oh yeah, best part about the SEC, I met my husband.
Oh, there you go.
I had time to meet my husband. Yeah, he was retiring from the military. He's very action oriented, and he looked at my 10-year plan and he was like, "No, we're cutting that in half. We're not doing that." So now, and then I got out and we did it together. I never would have done it that quickly without him.
What did you have to do to become a certified financial advisor?
Oh, so I'm not a financial advisor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, those are the people that the SEC regulates. I'm a financial counselor. So that basically means I went through an accreditation program. So I took a lot of personal finance curriculum to make sure that I would be able to speak to money problems that were not just my own. So, I can help people with paying down debt, with working on their savings plans, working with money habits. I know about things like bankruptcy and foreclosures and dealing with your credit report and things like that. That was part of my curriculum. Mm-hmm. When I finally started working with financial counseling clients, I realized the people that I really, really wanted to help were the ones who were trying to make career transitions like I did, and the ones that might be struggling, trying to figure out, can I live a completely different life in a totally different job and still afford everything that I want to do? That was such a huge hurdle for me in my own brain. And I didn't have time to think about it because I was so busy working, living. So that's what I try to take off of the shoulders of my clients. I think through those issues for them, and then we talk about different strategies, and then they're able to make those career decisions from an educated place about their finances and an empowered place. And that's the work that I absolutely love doing.
After learning all of these things about yourself throughout your career, what advice do you have for law students or people who are thinking about going to law school?
Ooh, so if you're thinking about going to law school, talk to as many lawyers as you can. I think that there's a disconnect between what law school teaches you about the practice of law and what the practice of law is actually like. I didn't interview nearly enough people to find out what the legal practice was like. If I had known that litigation was really going to be me basically fighting with people all day long and not me performing in a courtroom constantly, to an enraptured jury, I might, maybe I would have ended up in estate planning, right? That's a very counselor-esque area of the law. But I didn't know any estate planning attorneys. I didn't know enough about the different areas broken up into transactional litigation. Those are the only choices. And there's so much more out there, but I didn't even know to look because I didn't really know who to talk to. If you are already a lawyer and you are thinking, maybe this isn't for me, you need to talk to some people who are not lawyers, because talking to other lawyers about the law is not really helpful. We can't help each other. You have to talk to somebody who's outside. It'll give you a different perspective, and it might help highlight the things that you feel like you might be missing from your career or from your life in general. And it might give you some ideas of what else you could be doing with your time and your energy and your contributions that could be more fulfilling.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending all this time with us today and sharing all of your words of wisdom. I really appreciate you taking the time. This episode is sponsored by Sherry Bellett's Communications.
Hi everyone, this is Sherry Bellett's from Sherry Bellett's Communications. Do you have a case which needs a liability or damages evaluation for mediation or trial? I help lawyers use psychology to achieve favorable litigation outcomes with my strategic focus groups, mock trials, and jury research services. If you would like to learn more, please email me, sherry@sherrybellets.com. Thank you.
All right, everyone. That's it for today. Thank you to our guest speaker, and thank you to all of you for listening to another episode of the Law Lives Project. If you're a prospective law student that's interested in speaking with attorneys one-on-one, check out leguplegal.com. Legup Legal is an online mentoring platform that connects prospective law students with attorney mentors. Sign up for a membership today to learn more about the practice of law and see if it's a good fit for you. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes or any other platform that you're listening on. If you have any questions or comments about anything you heard on the podcast, or if you have ideas for guest speakers, please contact me by emailing me and my team at info@leguplegal.com. Thanks again, and don't forget to tune in next week.